remember the good old days when all you had to worry about was getting your homework done and getting home before curfew, before you had to worry about jobs, projects, working, when you could long for a summer vacation and a winter break? Well, this is the podcast for when you realize that life can be hard. Hold on one moment.
Finally, he's gone. Last thing I need to hear is him plugging another podcast. Come take a listen to my show, Adulting Ain't Easy, every other Wednesday on the Journey into Comics Network.
The following
Journey into Comics.
Journey into Comics.
It's a Journey into Comics.
Journey into Comics.
Journey into Comics.
Journey into Comics.
Network.
Production.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is episode 25 of Puhr 360. Quite a milestone episode. I know I've hit this milestone before, but it's nice to be on it on my new show, and it's just gonna keep on trucking this thing along and see how far we get in terms of quantity of episodes. As you guys know, pay attention to the past couple weeks, I've been talking about the upcoming 2020 election, checking in with what's going on with the Democratic Party, with their candidates, and what's going on with Trump on the Republican side, and if there's any Republican challengers, which, as of yet, I have not been made aware of any one challenging Trump in the primary. As far as it seems, he is the Republican candidate, so running for re-election. And I think I talked about last week that he's pretty much announced his re-election campaign like the day after he got inaugurated. So after this week, I decided that episode 25, what a better example would be, or a better show would be, to talk about the 2020 Democratic debates. 2 nights last week, I believe Tuesday night and Wednesday night, they had all 20 of the highest polled candidates debate. And obviously, you couldn't have 20 people on stage. It would just be a nightmare of crosstalk and just chaos. So they split into 10 people each night. And they did they did it based on like random, but it ended up working out that a lot of the front runners were on night 2, and really like Elizabeth Warren was on night 1 in a relatively sorry, my dog walked in right there, but Elizabeth Warren was kind of by herself with a bunch of, I don't want to say second tier candidates, but she was kind of she didn't have as much tough challengers on that one. Like, because on night 2 you had Kamala Harris, Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, and Pete Buttigieg. But on night 1 you had Elizabeth Warren, Beto O'Rourke, Cory Booker. Yeah, so it's just different tier of candidates. But before we jump into like what my thoughts are, as I watched them both. So my overall thoughts, I had like a page of notes that I took as they were talking that I'll kind of dig into. But the people at Now This made a 5-minute version condensing the 4 hours of debate on both nights total into a 5-minute video. So I'll play that right now for you guys. Then when we come back, I'll talk about kind of my overall thoughts. So here is the condensed version of the debate and kind of the fun stuff that happened and the randomness and all that, which I'll get into later. But here's that right now.
Decision 2020, the Democratic candidates debate.
Democrats are arguing robustly among themselves.
I'm going to go down the line here, and I'm asking you, please, for 1 or 2 words only.
Unlike the Republican Party, we encourage diversity. We believe in diversity. That's what America is about.
Buenas noches, gracias de invitarnos.
Necesitamos incluir cada persona en el éxito de esta economía.
La situación ahora es inaceptable.
We have a government that is of, by, and for the rich and powerful.
It is not right that the CEO of McDonald's makes 2,100 times more than the people slinging hash at McDonald's.
Women's reproductive rights are under assault by President Trump and the Republican Party.
There is not a black man I know, be he a relative, a friend, or a coworker, who has not been the subject of some form of profiling or discrimination.
If more guns made us safer, we'd be the safest country on earth. It doesn't work that way.
Russia is our greatest geopolitical threat because they've been hacking our democracy successfully, and they've been laughing their asses off about it for the last couple of years.
There are terrorists
that are held that get better health care than those kids that have tried to cross the border in the United States.
For all the American citizens out there who feel you're falling behind, who feel the American dream's not working for you, the immigrants didn't do that to you.
I don't believe only in reproductive freedom. I believe in reproductive justice.
We do not talk enough about trans Americans, especially African American trans Americans.
Our daughter Molly turned 11 this week.
Vice President Biden.
Senator Klobuchar, the floor is yours.
Immigrants, they do not diminish America. They are America. I don't think we should conduct foreign policy in our bathrobe at 5 in the morning. That's what we call at home, all foam and no beer.
I'm going to harness love for political purposes.
Gridlock will not magically disappear as long as Mitch McConnell is there.
Do you have a plan to deal with Mitch McConnell?
I do.
Governor Inslee,
Just
this next
give us a
question
second.
is to you. You got me?
Rachel.
You got me?
Joe Biden was right when he said it was time to pass the torch to a new generation of Americans 32 years ago. He's still right today.
We're going to continue the questioning now with Lester in the audience. We are?
Every other major country on earth, including my neighbor 50 miles north of me, Canada, somehow has figured out a way to provide health care to every man, woman, and child.
God bless the insurers. If they want to compete, they can certainly try. But they've never put people over their profits, and I doubt they ever will.
But let's remember, even in countries that have outright socialized medicine, like England, even there's still a private sector. That's fine.
We've heard a lot of good ideas on this stage tonight and a lot of plans.
I'll tell you one thing. It's really nice if we got all these plans, but if you think we're going to beat Donald Trump by just having all these plans, you got another thing coming.
What is the greatest national security threat to the United States? It's Donald Trump.
Trump is a phony. Trump is a pathological liar and a racist.
We have a president who doesn't believe in the rule of law. He doesn't believe in freedom of the press. He doesn't believe in independent judiciary.
President Trump has alienated our allies and our friends and our alliances. He's diminished our standing in the world.
One of the worst things about President Trump that he's done to this country is he's torn apart the moral fabric of who we are.
This president and his chicken hawk cabinet have led us to the brink of war with Iran.
Next to nothing has changed in federal law that might affect the prevalence of school shootings.
Gun violence is a national health emergency in this country, and we need to treat it like that.
I think I'm the only one, I hope I'm the only one on this panel here that had 7 people shot in their neighborhood just last week.
Do you know what? The Democrats, if I vote for them in there, they're going to take my gun away. Gun confiscation, right? How do you not have that conversation?
Well, that's not confiscation. You would give them the offer to buy back their gun.
Socialism, and in that sense, is not the solution.
What are the policies or positions of your opponents that you think are veering towards socialism?
For a follow-up, Mayor de Blasio, you're using it.
We are.
What's happening?
Just give me a one-word answer, Congressman Delaney.
Closing now?
Closing.
Okay, 45 seconds.
Senator Klobuchar, I want to get you. I'm fascinated by this.
On this issue, we have to think about how this affects.
Mics are on.
Everybody's mics are on. I think we have a. I heard that too. That's okay.
These are the issues that are before us, Chuck.
I hear you.
Now we are back, and I want to thank and obviously NBC, who aired the debates both nights. So now that we have kind of what we're going to talk about, so here's my general notes I took while I was watching the debates the other day, and there's kind of a lot of just randoms all over the place. Obviously, when you have a debate, you have candidates that are talking and kind of going back and forth. They're always trying to pivot the conversation back to one of their talking points, something they've rehearsed, they've memorized, that they know is their bread and butter of debate talk. People are always going to be like, whatever question you ask, they're going to find a way to like, oh, that reminds me of what I've done with this. And they'll talk about like something to do with their career, with something that makes them stand out amongst the other 19 candidates. Because until some start dropping out or some start getting kind of defeated, we're going to have a pretty large pool and a lot of people that have similar viewpoints. So really, until we get down to like the 10 or 5 that we're probably going to end up with in the next probably 6 to 8 months, we're probably going to see some drop off. And obviously there's some that are on here that like I didn't even mention once in my notes because it just besides a couple small points I had that didn't really come up that much, got minor. Even Bernie Sanders didn't really say all that much, but when he did talk, he kind of just yelled all over the place. But so that my first note I had written down was debate pivoting. So like I said, like everyone is talking, trying to get their points out, and the moderator will ask a question. They'll be either they won't even answer the question at all, or they'll pivot to something that better serves their purpose or what they want to talk about. Even when they try and like make try and have a good conversation about something, like, all right, let's talk about this. Now they're like, oh no, we're still going to talk about what I talked about before because I am really passionate about that and all that fun. And then next thing I have is that Beto speaking in Spanish. So Beto O'Rourke, who ran for Senate in Texas, I think it was Senate in Texas against Ted Cruz, and lost, but it was a close election for something that was a pretty predominantly Republican area. So he did pretty well, and somehow that made him feel like he could run for president. He's actually doing pretty well for himself, all things considered. But minutes into the debate starting, he decided to drop Spanish. And I know he is from southern Texas. He is near the border. He does have that. But it just seems odd to kind of drop Spanish. And it happened more than just him. Obviously, it's something that feel like that makes him stand out, that makes him appeal to Latino voters. But it just seemed a little odd and just kind of just doing it just for the votes or just to be different, and wasn't necessarily a big fan of that. The other thing I noticed that Cory Booker, who's also running, he's a senator as well, always kept bringing up the black neighborhood he grew up in, and the fact that he still lives in that neighborhood and how he experiences the crime and just the lower class area that he's in, and just he brought it up multiple times, and there was a pivot back to that, and friends that you've had that have lost gun violence, gunshots on the streets. You hope no one else on the panel has heard that. And for them, I doubt that him as a congressman now lives in that area, especially being a candidate now. I don't think that. I think it's a more political posturing at that point. More things just to stand out. Obviously, this is all kind of in order as I was watching it. Current New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio did bring up the fact that he had a black son, which kind of how he's talking about the rights of minorities and all of that. He wants to bring that up a lot, and that's kind of his point, because obviously he's probably a fairly wealthy white man who has a pretty high power authority. Like any mayor of any major city, especially New York City, which is the largest city, has the population of some states, it feels like. You kind of have to make yourself stand out in that, and he feel like that would make him appeal, the fact that he has a black son. Two nights of 10 Oh, that was just my journal. There's 2 nights of I already talked about that. One that actually surprised me that I know going into it, Julian Castro, who was the HUD secretary, I believe, under Obama, he had a pretty great debate performance. I was kind of unexpecting it, but he had some good stuff. He obviously dropped into Spanish as well, but being the only Hispanic candidate from both nights, him actually saying it makes more sense than Beto O'Rourke or Cory Booker dropping it in randomly, feeling like that was just for appeal. And one thing I also said, like I wrote down here, was that there's no respect for the time limit they're given or the speaking order. I know it's a debate, and I know everybody I've ever seen has never really obeyed. You have 30 seconds to answer this question. You have 45 seconds. You have 10 seconds to respond. They'll blow right past it. They'll hear the cutoff like, sir, you're out of time. Sir, you're out of time. And they just keep talking over this. And I know that's just, they want to get their point out, but it just seems that there's a lot more questions they could get to if they all respected that point, that level. And it got kind of annoying because it happened, especially when people got passionate. I understand. When you get passionate about something, you don't like getting cut off. You want to finish your thought. You don't want to just say, stop mid-sentence. But I almost wish they would have like a mic cutoff that as soon as you go over time, you get like 5 seconds, and then mic's off and you can't talk anymore. But that is what it is. Lots of crosstalk. I'm saying, like, there's a lot of people talking over each other, which being just like a garbled mess. You heard a lot of that in that Now This recording that I played a few minutes ago. And it doesn't help anyone when you're just trying to talk over someone. And it does seem that a lot of this crosstalk happens because the moderator will ask one of the... I feel like they're asking a lot of like the bigger candidates, usually the ones that are lined up more in the center, because like all the popular candidates, the ones that are drawing in the crowds, the one that have the most enthusiastic supporters, the ones that are in the news a lot, are the ones that are more positioned in the center. And then it kind of, as you get out towards the ends, you have the more periphery candidates, the ones that don't really have that appeal, and they're just kind of lucky to be there. So, like I said, another thing that kind of has to go with all the debate pivoting. So it's like one question equals a pivot to a stump speech, a memorized talking point, another repetition. Like they'll bring up, like I said with Cory Booker bringing up his neighborhood he grew up in and all of that. You had a lot of people repeating things that we've already heard said. And if you're watching both nights, you kind of get a lot of that. And I don't think Elizabeth Warren really did that too much, from my remembering of the first night. But it kind of goes without saying. I feel like when you get the repetition, it shows that you've rehearsed this too well, that you're not speaking off the cuff. You've sat with your team and practiced your stump speeches. You've practiced possible debate questions, and you probably have gotten some of these ahead of time, so you have these formed answers. And I don't know, I know it's just the nature of the beast when you have to do these, and it's not going to be the first debate they have. They're probably going to have at least a few more before we end up at the primary election. And the sooner they get the number worked out and the sooner they get a unified base, they can put a challenge against Donald Trump in the general. Like we saw the issue that happened in 2016 when Bernie lost the primary. He never really backed down, never really fully supported Clinton. He kind of had a divided base, and that hurt because some people who were for Bernie and then Hillary got the nomination voted for Trump kind of out of spite. And yeah, that's just a whole nother thing, and that's years ago at this point. It's not really worth bringing up. And that's really my points. I didn't have too many things from the first night regarding that. Julian Castro had some great talking points. Elizabeth Warren probably was probably between Julian Castro and Elizabeth Warren, those were probably my favorite candidates of the night. They both had really good talking points, and I think either of them would do a good job, and let's see them continue and move forward. Going into night two, my first two things were that Bernie Sanders, who obviously ran in 2016, longtime senator, I believe, from Vermont. I always get if it's their senator. Either way, there's someone in one of the governing bodies. So it seemed extra crotchety in the debate, and always yelled every answer, despite the fact that he's microphone and everyone can hear him. It's just like, I feel like he was just yelling into my ears. I'm like, okay, calm yourself. He was not very measured. And then Joe Biden, by comparison, who was sitting next to him, because you had the three in the Senate you had was the four senators. So you had Pete Buttigieg, then you had Joe Biden, then you had Bernie Sanders, then you had Kamala Harris. And that was your kind of your fourth center, and then you had everyone else kind of flanking around the edges. And Joe Biden, I think whenever he talks, at least what I've seen now, is a little folksy in terms of like, he'll talk like something like, what my dad said, or growing up here, and it always sounds a little like your grandfather talking to you about the good old days, and it kind of gets old after a while. I kind of want to hear their plans for the future, not just talking about their past. I understand the past forms your future, but I feel like just give the talking points, give me your platform, your statements, all of that. Pete Buttigieg was actually the first person on night two to speak Spanish. I had to note that when I was leading that. Again, it's just same thing with the first night. Speaking Spanish for the sake of speaking Spanish. Okay, we get it. You took high school Spanish. That doesn't make me think you're a good candidate. Yes, I know you're trying to reach out to Democratic voters. I know at the last State of the Union or the State of the Union before that, I think Joe Kennedy III spoke in Spanish during his response to the State of the Union. And I feel like a lot of it's just they're doing it just to do it. There's no real reason behind it. It's all just for political points, and it feels unnecessary to me. One of the best moments, I think you heard a little of in the recording as well, was Eric Swalwell, who I know I talked about him 2 weeks ago. Honestly, don't know what he is. I think he's probably like a junior senator or a congressman or something. He brought up this thing that I feel like was obviously a direct target at Biden, who is clearly, in all current polls and all that, is the front runner, has the strongest lead, at least as of the debates, and obviously has the longest record, so he's the kind of the easiest target there. He brought up a thing that Joe Biden had said like in the late 80s at one of the conventions about passing the torch, which is like Joe Biden in that time was saying like the next generation of Democrats need to take the torch and run with it kind of thing. So his whole thing was Joe Biden, do you think it's time to pass the torch? And then Joe Biden made a little, kind of laughed, made a little joke, because I'm still hold on to that torch and try to defuse it. But it definitely was a little bit of a blow. And then Kamala Harris really, for the first time, the debate shortly after that, there was a lot of crosstalk and more back and forth. It was getting a little heated, and Kamala Harris made a food fight statement. It says, people don't want to see us have this food fight. They want to know how we're going to put food on their table. It was very measured. And I think it really shows that she's someone who I think can put a stop to this, and I think really stand up from a debate performance against Trump in the general if she gets that far. And yeah, I was really some of the stuff she was saying and a lot of her points, and the fact that she can be measured but still have emotion and power in her voice, I think that will help her a lot from Trump's usual demeanor. And she's a relatively young candidate by comparison. I mean, the front runners you have on the Democratic side, you have like Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren. They're all in late midlife. Like, they're in their 70s. I think Elizabeth Warren's probably in her early to mid 60s, I'd imagine. I don't honestly don't have like their ages in front of me, but that's kind of how I would kind of guess at her age. But yeah, so I think in Kamala or Kamala Harris, by comparison, she's young or younger than the other candidates, or not like all the other candidates, but of the upper level candidates, she is the youngest one or one of the youngest ones, and it helps someone that can put up a good fight. She's not going to have the usual things, and as a minority female candidate, she is definitely, I think, someone who could be a polar opposite to Trump, and I think she has what it takes to really take it the rest of the way. And that brings me from kind of from one woman to another is this Marianne Williamson, who honestly didn't know existed. She started talking. It was a little. She's an interesting person to say the least. She was saying something, and I think it was in the recording as well, is that we can't win with plans. She feels like, and she was like, you have to be action, you have to target Donald Trump. She was very, like, all feeling, no substance was kind of the gist I got from her personality, her character here. So, and I wrote down that she's the Donald Trump of the Democratic candidates. Not that she's like Bush out there, but she is the most. Yeah, like, it's all talk, no substance. She's just all emotion, inflection, and she's different. I'll give her that. She's a different type of candidate than we've seen, and I don't think she's good that far. I think she's more the one that's just sticking it out just to help change things, but just her talk and the way things and that whole thing. She made the statement at the end of the second debate about how Donald Trump harnesses hate for political purposes, and I'm going to harness love for political purposes. It was weird, and it was a little all over the place, and it's just kind of odd. Yeah, and also one thing I noticed that she was never fully paying attention. Like, one of the moderators would ask a question to someone like next to her, and she's like, "Oh, is that for me?" Like, no, you listen for your name. She did that a couple times. I was like, what are you doing? Pete Buttigieg made a good comment about separation of church and state, that the Republican Party is the party of, they're the party of the separation of church and state, and the Republican Party likes to cloak themselves in the language of religion as a way to get their agenda across, and how the hypocrisy of that, and how Jesus Christ wouldn't turn away people that are let people die and live in this situation, and they could help them out. And I get that from a fundamentally religious standpoint. Yes, God is love. Jesus loves everyone, and yeah, treat your neighbor as your friend. All of that, and yeah, I get that. That's definitely a good point. And there's my comment that I kind of already brought up about how Kamala Harris can be calm, measured, and disciplined when needed, and can also be pointed. She made some good comments against Joe Biden regarding busing and how it put Joe Biden on the defensive, and he was looking pretty strong going into the Democratic debate, and got a little bloodied in that. There was a lot of things that were pointed at him based on his record with the Obama administration, based on his past performances, based on things he's said in the past, and this busing thing, which was something he came out that he was against, and he said that he wasn't against it. He just said he was against it as a federal thing. It should be a local and state level thing, and how Kamala Harris was a part of the second class 10 years after Brown versus the Board of Education, about getting bused to school and all. And it was, he got a little bit of that, and he had unfortunately said was something I feel like is going to be kind of an infamous thing, like how the deplorables thing caught on during the 2016 election, how Hillary Clinton called Donald Trump supporters deplorable, and then it kind of caught on, it's still being talked about. During Joe Biden's response to what she said, the moderator called time, and he was talking, they said, "Oh, my time's up, I'm sorry," and all that. And that "my time's up" is not, with the Time's Up movement, and with the fact of his age, and the fact there's a lot of younger Democratic candidates trying to get their foothold, I feel like that's a blurb, that's a soundbite that's going to kind of come back to haunt him. Bernie Sanders, another thing I wrote, whenever he wasn't making a point or never asked a direct question, he stayed pretty silent. He kind of faded into the background a lot, and I don't know if that was on purpose or if he was just trying to avoid getting involved in the crosstalk and getting involved in not attacking other candidates, but just getting into the mess with the other candidates. But he seemed very, like, I don't think he even talked that much. I know I have some data over here that'll kind of say how many people talked and their standing before versus after, and yeah. So let's see, what else do I have here? Senator Gillibrand talked about the tax cuts to the rich as result of paying back donors. How Republican candidates predominantly have like the PAC money, and they're from these wealthy candidates or wealthy industrialist types, and how one of the reasons they did the sweeping tax cuts was to pay back those donors in terms of money for the money they gave them. And so they actually came out and said, and so she was very much for a public and clean election free from PAC money and the likes of like the Koch brothers. So, and I'm actually for that. I don't think these big industries, I think they should all be public donations. It shouldn't be these elections themselves shouldn't cost like billions of dollars to pull off. It should be much lower than that. You don't need all these ad buys. I remember talking about this last year when the Illinois was electing their governor. There's just all these attack ads, and like I could see like the same ad like 3 times, even on like Hulu, and just not just TV and stuff. It was just a mess. I feel like those are unnecessary, but to each their own, I guess. What is it? Bernie Sanders was the first one to jump in on the Roe v. Wade about reproduction rights. Roe v. Wade and then reproduction rights. But I thought it was kind of odd when you want to talk about reproductive rights, you don't want to listen to the 72-year-old old New Yorker get his 2 cents out of you when there's 3 pretty promising female candidates who have good things to say and actually have dealt with that. It just seemed odd choice, and just the optics of it are a little just not good. They're just bad optics overall on that. I think Gillibrand had the best statement about reproductive rights. I didn't write it down. I don't remember exactly what she said, but I remember it was very powerful. It was very in the moment, and I think that definitely helped her. I don't know where she falls in that. I know she's one of the lower tier, not to be in that, but she's not in the top 10. Probably close, though. Now I'm kind of thinking about it. Kamala Harris said a good thing about how Donald Trump and the Republicans believe in science fiction versus science fact when it comes to climate change and the climate crisis that we're dealing with. That was a good statement, and I thought they got on the climate change for a bit, and I think it was very good. And then she also said at one point that the greatest threat to the U.S. isn't like from a foreign company; it's from Donald Trump and how he is kind of schmoozing these foreign leaders, like Kim Jong-un and like Putin, like all of those guys over there, and is just doing the strokes of ego just to be different. And the fact that like he was over the weekend was the first U.S. president to set foot on soil in North Korea. Is that a good thing? Some people are spinning it that way. It's just it's weird. It's different. Who's to say what this is actually going to lead to? But yeah, that was kind of my overall thoughts on that. So that gets us into some articles I found that I think are worth discussing. They're all kind of post-debate. I had a couple more, but I kind of ran a little long with my actual discussion of it. So let me pull up what I was going to say here. So is this what I was looking for? Yes. Those are word spoken talk time. I'm going to find the one that had the actual amount of time they were talking, because I think that's pretty important as it comes to the rest. Oh, that's not it. That's the same one I looked at before. Sorry, I should have had these pulled up before. I kind of got a little off track here. Is that everyone? Sanders won. Okay, so the amount of minutes talked, I think, is kind of an important statement. So, and it kind of follows kind of the, except for a few of them, it kind of follows the more, it kind of goes, you flip-flop a few around, but it's for the most part probably the top 5 you're going to have. There's a few that are like kind of a little out of left field, but so Biden talked the most of 13.6 minutes of just him talking. I don't know if it counts crosstalk, but that's it. Under him was Kamala Harris, 11.9 minutes. Bernie Sanders, 11 minutes, which I'm really surprised by. I feel like it didn't feel like he was talking for 11 minutes when I heard him there. Booker with 10.9 minutes. He did kind of tend to butt into conversations a lot and try and get other points in. Pete Buttigieg was just under him at 10.5. O'Rourke, 10.3. Warren at 9.3. I feel like Warren should have been higher. She did have a lot of good points to say, and when she did talk, it was worth sharing. Julian Castro at 8.8. Amy Klobuchar at 8.5. I don't remember. I think it's Michael Bennett at 8.1. Tim Ryan at 7.7. They don't have the first names for some of these. Kristen Gillibrand, 7.5. Tulsi Gabbard at 6.6. Delaney, 6.6. Bill de Blasio, 5.6. Hickenlooper at 5.2. Joe Inslee at 5 minutes. Marianne Williamson also at 5 minutes. Eric Swalwell at 4.3 minutes. And Andrew Yang at 3 minutes. And I actually like some of what Andrew Yang said. I don't honestly think he has a chance. He was probably one of the first ones to drop off, to be honest. Maybe that, or maybe like Ryan or Bennett. Swalwell, I think, saw some fight in him, despite not talking for very much when you kind of compare the two. Let's see what else was worth sharing here. So let's see, the first Democratic debate. So here's just kind of some charts found. This is from the 538.com. So they had 5 charts to show, and obviously I'm not showing these 5 charts, but I kind of described the context of it, and it's so Warren, Harris, and Castro flew above expectations. So there was a trend chart of like debate performance versus predate favorability. Yeah, and it does show Warren, Harris, Castro up there. Booker as well. When you have like Buttigieg, Biden, Sanders, O'Rourke, all of them kind of trending lower, and then at the very bottom is Williamson. But her performance and her favorability all kind of been pretty neutral, to say the least. Then it has like another interesting point here, which is I don't know if it's a good metric to measure their popularity or what to look out for, but it actually has their Twitter followers, like how many they've picked up or went down versus what it was before. So here is who gained the most Twitter followers. So Harris actually was the most. She gained a total of 59,588 Twitter followers following the debate. She was at just about 2.73 million Twitter followers, and then gained about 60,000. That's not bad. Castro, who didn't have a lot, he had 220,000, almost 221,000 followers, and he gained almost 55,000, which percentage-wise, that's a giant jump. Pete Buttigieg, who had like 1.2 million, gained about 40,000, so not bad. Andrew Yang, 404,000. Actually surprised he had more than Castro, but he gained about 40,000. Marianne Williamson, surprisingly, has 2.621 million followers. Who is this woman? She gained a little over 31,000 followers. Surprisingly, almost as much as Elizabeth Warren, but I feel kind of surprising. Elizabeth Warren only has 2.673 million by comparison. Gained about 30,000, so yeah, that's surprising. Who has the least amount of followers? Obviously, like, Booker actually... Nope, sorry. Sanders has the most followers at 9.341 million and gained about 7,000, but that's a lot of followers to begin with, so don't think he's hurting. Biden has 3.6. Biden has less than Marianne Williamson. This is just kind of bizarre. Didn't gain much. Lowest person is Delaney. He had 22,000 before the debate. Now it has gained about 2.5 or 2,500. So not great. Actually, no, Ryan and they're about even. So let's see. So we have who gained the most followers. So the Thursday debates, Castro was the one to watch, at least on Twitter. He had gained more than 50,000 followers by Thursday afternoon. The following Thursday night's debate, so I guess it was Wednesday, Thursday, not Tuesday, Wednesday. Harris gained nearly 60,000, the most new followers acquired by any of the Democratic candidates between the day of their debate and the following afternoon. This might come as a surprise, as Harris had a particularly powerful moment when she called out Biden for his remarks about working with segregationist senators and his opposition to school integration via busing in the 1970s, saying the issue affected her personally. There's a little girl in California who was a part of the second class to integrate her public schools, and she was bused to school every day, and that little girl was me. Very powerful. And I talked about that. That was her first point thing, and how Biden kind of went out of that debate pretty bloody. Who held the floor? I already talked about the time, but it'll be the number of words. So, of course, in order for any of these candidates to impress viewers or gain followers, they need to get their messages out. As you can see in the table, which I'll kind of describe, Harris and Booker were among the candidates with the highest number of words spoken on either night. But just holding the floor wasn't enough. Biden, for instance, spoke more words than any other candidate, but according to results from our poll, he lost supporters, dropping from nearly 42% before the first night of the debate to 30% after his appearance on Thursday. So Joe Biden spoke almost 2,500 words. Cory Booker, almost 2,200. Kamala Harris, about the same, 2,200. Pete Buttigieg, about 2,100. Beto O'Rourke is about 2,000. Bernie Sanders, 1,676. Elizabeth Warren just made that at 1,637. And then it kind of seems like a lot of people spoke. Andrew Yang's with the least amount, but he also talked the least amount, so it's not all that unsurprising. So we compared the numbers of the words to their polling average. And perhaps surprised, the number of words spoken by each of the candidates roughly correlated with their polling average over both nights, with the coach being somewhat stronger during the second debate. So the support versus words they got in, basically it kind of goes Biden, Sanders, Warren, Harris, Buttigieg, O'Rourke, Booker, and then kind of everyone else is kind of on the left into that poll there. Avoid Trump or invoke him. So one of the most obvious differences between the two nights of the debate was how many times the candidates mentioned or didn't mention Trump's name. The candidates on stage Thursday mentioned the president a total of 34 times. while the candidates on Wednesday mentioned him just 20 times. Notably, Senator Elizabeth Warren did not use his name a single time on the first night, making her the only one of the 4 candidates leading the polls not to mention Trump explicitly, which I think is a very good move. It shows they don't need to bring up the negative to talk about the positive. But on the second night, Trump and his administration policies took center stage. For example, Senator Kristen Gillibrand, who has positioned herself as the most anti-Trump candidate, mentioned the president 8 times, the most of any candidate on either night, at one point saying he was torn apart the moral fabric of who we are. Powerful words, powerful words. So obviously, Gillibrand talked to her the most. Bernie Sanders talked about 6 times. Marianne Williamson 6 times. Joe Biden 4 times. Beto O'Rourke 3 times. And then a lot of people like Pete Buttigieg, Eric Swalwell, Elizabeth Warren, Bill de Blasio all did not mention Trump once. So, not bad at all. And so we're getting a little long in the tooth in this podcast here. I kind of want to jump into kind of the post-debate performance here. And this involves, a lot has to do with Biden. So Biden is kind of, since the debate, he has fallen a little bit. He had a pretty solid lead, and he's kind of, he's still leading, but he's not leading by much. So Kamala Harris has rocketed into the top tier of the Democratic presidential primary, while Joe Biden, once double-digit lead, has crumbled in a national poll taken after the last week's debate. The CNN/SRSS poll, which was released on Monday and conducted entirely after the first 2 Democratic presidential primaries debates last week, has Harris, the California senator, in second place among Democrats and Democratic-leaning independents, who are registered to vote at 17%. Harris's surge places her firmly within the top tier, which now consists of 4 candidates. Biden still sits at the top of the pack with 22%, but his once commanding lead has eroded significantly. Senator Liz Warren is in third with 15%, followed by Senator Bernie Sanders with 14%. So 22, 17, 15, and 14. They're still pretty close. It's still a free-for-all. Both Harris and Warren saw sizable jumps in their support over a previous CNN national poll taken at the end of May. Harris went up 9 points from 8% in May, and Warren rose by 8 points from 7% in May. So pretty strong jumps. The largest drop came from Biden. He was at 32% in the May poll, 10 points ahead of where he is polled now. Sanders also slipped slightly by 4 points, which is in the poll's margin of error. The drop is steep from the top 4 candidates to South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg, which still surprised me. I don't understand how a mayor of South Bend, Indiana is this far up in the rankings. I think he's a war hero. He is gay, which I think does help. He's the distant 5th place at 4%. Cory Booker and former Rep. Beto O'Rourke each have 3%, and Senator Amy Klobuchar has 2%. And then everyone else kind of falls into the kind of the 0.5%, 1%, all of that. Biden's still the leader among black voters. There's an up to 24% for Harris, but his advantage with what had been the strongest cohort is diminished. Among white voters, the top 4 candidates are essentially tied. 27 for Biden, 17 for Harris, 16 for Warren, and 15 for Sanders. Biden is particularly hurt in the horse race polling with young voters. Just 30% of voters under 45 picked him as their choice to be the nominee. Sanders leads the voters with 45%, or 45 with 21%. Leads with voters under 45 with 21%. That's just a little bit of a tongue twister. Followed by Harris's 18% and Warren 17%. Among older voters, Biden's still on top. For voters 45 and older, Biden is at 29%, followed by Harris at 17%, Warren at 13%, and Sanders at 8%. Harris's rise came after a strong debate performance last week in Miami, where she confronted Biden over his record on racial issues, including his comments about segregationist Senate colleagues and past opposition to federally mandated busing. But despite the strong ratings for the debate, a majority of Democrats and Democratic-leaning independents say they did not watch the debate. 42% that they watched either all or most of both or one debate, while 57% they did not tune in for either. Of the non-watchers, instead said they paid close attention to the news stories after the debate. Americans are divided on healthcare as well, with all adults were asked if the government should provide a national healthcare insurance program for all Americans, even if this would require higher taxes. Majority 56% support it, with 40% disapproving of the idea. But of that 56%, more than say it should not be completely replace private health insurance, 32% with 21% saying it should. On stage, Sanders and Harris both raised their hand when asked who would abolish private health insurance in favor of a government-only plan. Only if Harris backtracked, saying she misunderstood the question. Good, playing it close to the vest, so she's not locked into something later. The poll counts to qualify candidates for both the second round of Democratic debates at the end of this month and the third round of debates in September. Currently, 21 candidates qualified for the second debate. The 20 candidates who debated last week, plus Montana Governor Steve Bullock, who actually he was on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, kind of talking a little bit. So he's the 21st candidate. But the Democratic National Committee said it will limit the round to 20 candidates, meaning at least one qualifying candidate will be excluded. So we're going to see who drops off there. I wonder if we'll have one that'll bow out of this election before it gets to that point. There's the first poll that counts toward qualification for the September debate. To qualify, candidates must hit 2% in 4 DNC-approved polls and receive donations from 130,000 supporters. So far, 7 candidates have publicly said they've crossed the donor mark: Biden, Buttigieg, Harris, O'Rourke, Sanders, Warren, and Andrew Yang. The poll surveyed 656 Democrats and Democratic-leaning independents with live interviews from June 28th to 30th. The margin of error is plus or minus 4.7 percentage points. Thank you, Politico, for this lovely information. And I think that's some good information. Obviously, you can go to YouTube, you can go on Facebook and stuff, and you can see clips from the debates. I think it's good to watch some of these in context. If you see like the late night guys talk about it, they condense all the funny bits, and sometimes they make people look good, look bad. It's just how you spin it. But I think just by paying attention to what's being said, listen to their points, and I think as we start narrowing down this list, it'll become clear who the frontrunner should be and who we should elect as the Democratic candidate for the 2020 election to take on Donald Trump in the general. So with that, I think that'll do it for episode 25 of Puhr 360 for this week. I want to thank you guys for listening. If you have any thoughts, feedback, anything I can do, please address me on Facebook. I'm also on Twitter. I'm also on Instagram. I don't post on Instagram all that often. But yeah, that was Puhr 360 episode 25 on the 2020 debates. Definitely going to be bringing you more feedback as the dates to come. And as we get into the general, there'll be a lot more coverage on this end. So I am Andrew Puhr. You guys have a great week. You've been listening to Puhr 360. You can find us on the socials at Puhr 360 on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find us and all the other podcasts on our network at JourneyIntoComics.com or early access at Patreon.com/JourneyIntoComics. You can find us on all podcasting platforms like CastBox, Podbean, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, and many others.